Hello and welcome to Strive Defense Garden. I am Brigadier Rakesh Bhatia, and today my guest is Colonel Rajiv Agarwal. Colonel Rajiv, welcome to the show.
Thank you, sir.
Colonel Rajiv has been on our show earlier also. Whenever there is a development in Middle East, we remember Colonel Rajiv, and he's been kind enough to come and give us opinion, which he expresses in various articles very frequently. Colonel Rajiv, Middle East is once again on boil. Now the number of actors who are involved have increased. Earlier, we started with Israel, came down to Israel and Palestine, then Hezbollah, then now Houthis are there, then Saudi Arabia got involved, and now Iran and Israel have come out in open. Before I hand over the stage to you, Kal Rajiv, I have collected few inputs from the articles that you have mentioned. For those of our viewers who want to read his articles, the link is given in the description given below. In the first article, you mentioned about the UNSC resolution which was passed on 25th March 2024. As per your opinion, this was supposedly a watershed moment because after failed four attempts, this was the fifth attempt where a UNSC resolution was passed which demanded immediate ceasefire and release of hostages. But nothing of that sort happened. On the contrary, the conflict seems to have increased. At the beginning of the war, Israel's aim was to flatten Gaza, eliminate Hamas, and get back all its hostages. We'll request you to tell us how far has Israel succeeded in doing it. On the other hand, Hamas wanted to keep Palestine cause fresh in the minds of all concerned and also expose the false sense of invincibility of the Israeli Defense Forces and Mossad. Again, same request, tell us what is the degree of success of Hamas in achieving their aim. And in the end, give us the analysis who lost the most, whether it was Israel who lost or Hamas who lost, and who gained the sympathy or status of being victimized because of the situation. And what has been going on 1st of April, there was the attack on Damascus. 7 members of IRGC were killed. On 7th April, there was a very interesting development where Israelis pulled out their troops from Gaza. There was very strong rumor on Twitter that there is some deal in the offing. If it is true, if at all it is true, who do you think has sabotaged it? And as far as Iran is concerned, now there are no more proxies. He's not fighting Israel through proxies, but he has joined the battle. Iran has also called for Muslim unity, everybody to unite against Israel, and also threatened to block the Strait of Hormuz to bring the world economy to a stop. In last few days, the developments that have taken place, everybody is asking this question. How come now that Iran, Israel have come out in open? What is going to happen? And is Iran on the threshold of nuclear bomb or has already made one dirty bomb? Is there a fear of, again, world war in view of continuing Russian-Ukraine war and now this fiasco that is continuing in the Middle East? Over to you, Kal Rajiv Agarwal.
Thank you, Brigadier Bhatia, and it's always a pleasure to be with you on your show. As regards the Gaza war, which is going on, the developments have been so fast that it is very difficult to keep pace with all the developments. And by the time, we follow something, we write something, or we speak on something, another major development has taken place, which totally overturns the perception that was based on the previous one. So, as you pointed out, we'll start from the recent development that was on 25th of March, and that was the first time that the Security Council could successfully pass a resolution which asked for immediate ceasefire as also unconditional release of hostages. So this was the first time it could happen after a number of vetoes. I think 4 vetoes took place, out of which 3 were done by the US itself. So it was a important landmark in the war as such towards peace and return of troops back to the barracks. But as was expected, Israel would not have agreed, and it said that it had been betrayed in the United Nations by the United States, its primary ally, because Israel would have never agreed for withdrawal of troops from Gaza as also a permanent ceasefire. All that Israel was willing to was an unconditional release or exchange of hostages and a temporary ceasefire, which was not acceptable to the Hamas. So immediately, once the Israelis spoke back on the resolution, US was very quick to buckle down and say, no, it was a non-binding resolution, and Israel can still keep doing whatever it has been doing. Although if we know the United Nations Security Council resolutions, any resolution is a binding resolution, and by just saying that it was a non-binding resolution is making a mockery of the whole process, as I wrote about it. And Hamas also, once the Israelis came out, they said, no, if there is no permanent ceasefire, no withdrawal of troops from Gaza, there cannot be any exchange of hostages and there cannot be any ceasefire. So that was what happened on 25th of March, and thereafter the battle lines remained joined, and there was a important and unfortunate development where Israel again targeted the Al Shifa hospital in central Gaza for the second time. If you recall, it had targeted it in November 2023, which had caused a lot of outrage in the international community once the videos and pictures of the patients and children who have been killed came out in the open. So this time again, they did the same thing, and the result was almost the same, and there was absolute outrage in the international media and circles on the Al Shifa attack. But what has actually turned the tables in this ongoing war was unprecedented attack by Israel, not in terms of the attack itself, but in choosing the target. So on 1st of April, Israel is supposed to have targeted the Iranian consulate in Damascus, Syria, where they found out through the intelligence sources that a number of high-profile leaders of the IRGC were congregating to plan on the ongoing operations. And in that attack on the consulate, one of the major commanders, Major General Mohammad Reza Zaidi, was killed, and it caused a lot of outrage in Iran for 2 reasons. Firstly, that an important IRGC commander who was coordinating the entire operations in Iraq and Syria was killed. And secondly, more I think because a consulate or an embassy complex of a country is considered a sovereign territory of that country, and any attack on a consulate or an embassy is considered an act of war. So Iran took it this way, which is technically correct, and they said that this act cannot go unpunished. In fact, their supreme leader Khamenei also came out and said very clearly that the Zionist regime should be punished and will be punished. So that was one big turning point in the recent war that happened. And after that, there was a mad scramble in Israel. US pleaded immediately that it had no knowledge of this attack in Damascus, and nor had it been consulted. But Iran, through whatever intelligence it gathered, was not ready to accept this plea. And it said very clearly that it was US which had given the green signal, and it could not have been done, without the knowledge of United States, that a F-35 could take off from the Iranian airbase and carry out a strike and come back, and the US does not know about it. So it was, and to an independent mind also, it seems very obscure and improbable that the United States would not have known about it. And thereafter, started the period of suspense from the 2nd April onwards, that when Iran will attack, there were, some inputs that it might attack on 5th of April, then it could attack on 7th of October, April, because it completed the 6 months of the Gaza war. But most estimates had suggested that it will carry out its retaliatory strike after Eid, that is after 11th of April. And accordingly, rightly so, this strike came about last night on 13th April, when Iran launched massive barrage of drones and missiles from its territory into Israel, and most of them were intercepted, but few found their mark, and they were able to target and inflict damage on the airbase in Israel, the airbase from which the aircrafts had taken off, F-35 aircrafts had taken off in the Negev desert, which had targeted the Damascus. So that is how the situation is right now. And immediately after the attack, Iran promptly put out a statement in the permanent, office of United Nations in New York, saying that it was a self-defense attack, which is justified under the Article 51 of the UN Charter, and that attack has met the military objectives that it was set out for, and that Iran considers the matter closed. So for Iran, as it sees it, the matter is closed. They have taken out, they have conducted a retaliatory strike. Part of the strike has met the military objective. They have only targeted military objective. No civilians have been killed. In fact, no military personnel have been killed or injured, except for one. I think some young teenager has been injured due to a splinter or something like that. So Iran has tactically and strategically kept it small, kept it only military, and kept it tight to see that if better sense prevails, and if Israel is able to prevail upon its pressures, both domestic and international, then this matter should stand close. So that is how that is where the situation is right now.
But technical Rajiv, what do you think? The way Israel has been going relentlessly after Hamas, covert operations against Iran also they have never stopped. But yes, in the past they have been targeting the military officers and the scientists who are involved in the nuclear thing. And Israel has taken a vow that they will not let Iran make one nuclear bomb. I'm sure the US also generally aligned with this thought process of Israel. So, what do you think? Is it the end of it, or just a because it was a military target, just because it was limited in time and space, that now it's the end? Israel won't do anything against Iran. What are your views on that?
So it's very difficult to say. I mean, no scholar or anyone who's following the developments in West Asia can predict for certainty on what Israel is going to do. But two things that I can say right now is, one is that there's a general perception that this should be taken as a one-off affair and ended with it. And Israel can also get away by saying that it achieved its victory, because 99.9% missiles and drones were thwarted. None of them were able to strike any civilian or any other facility in Israel, and only a part damage could happen to airbase in Negev desert, which is a military target and has got nothing directly to do with the civilian population as such. So this is one small option of or window which Israel can exercise if it wants. I also read somewhere where President Biden had a chat with Netanyahu immediately after the attack, and there's a cryptic quote there in the media which said that Biden has said no foul, no harm. So saying that you just get over with it, and this should not be escalated any further. But knowing Netanyahu, how belligerent he is, how aggressive he is, it is very difficult to say whether Israel will let go of this and not initiate any direct attack into Iran hereafter. Netanyahu also has to, when we talk of this, we have to also see where Netanyahu is. So if you see from a Netanyahu's perspective, he's in a very difficult situation. He's whether that Damascus consulate attack happened with all the repercussions in mind or not, that is a separate question, but that happened. But today, when Netanyahu is facing the situation back home, he has a very difficult situation. He had set out three war objectives to completely eliminate Hamas. Hamas has not yet been eliminated. Best Western estimates suggest that only 30% of the operatives have been, killed. Large part of the arsenal of rockets, etc., is still there. The famous Gaza metro, which was estimated to be around 400, 450 kilometers. Now the Western estimates say that it could be even in excess of 700 kilometers. And that still, in large part, remains intact and undiscovered. And Yahya Sinwar, the mastermind of the Hamas attack, terror attack of 7th October, still remains at large. The
Yes.
second was to completely destroy and flatten Gaza to the ground. Yes, Israel can say that they have achieved this objective. In addition to this objective, they have also flattened almost a kilometer wide strip running parallel to the Gaza Israel border, which, as input suggests, they are likely to convert it into a buffer zone at the end of the war to see that they get adequate early warning if there's any movement in that 1 kilometer stretch. And the third objective was to rescue the hostages. So, except for a brief period in November when they could rescue some of the old people, women, and medically ill patients, 70 of them, there's been no success on that part, and that is where Netanyahu is facing the heat back home, because for a common citizen in Israel, the longer the war drags on, the lesser are the chances that the hostages will come back alive. We already know that 30 to 32 hostages have already been killed in crossfire between Israel and Hamas, of which I think three or four of them were killed deliberately, reported by the Israeli soldiers, despite they showing white flag, etc., and all that. So Netanyahu is in a very difficult position. Also, we have to understand that he is in a coalition with a large number of right-wing party ministers who are then in his war cabinet, and they would not be, willing to let go of this particular attack by Iran, saying that you take it on the chin and let it go. So Netanyahu is in a very very difficult position. Few days back, if you recall, Iran had closed the Strait of Hormuz for all Israeli flagged ships and anything that is carrying Israeli cargo. They already nabbed, I think, one ship which was a Portuguese ship, but which was which was owned by an Israeli businessman and was carrying some goods, etc. So Red Sea is already closed for Israel. The Strait of Hormuz is closed for Israel. So economy-wise, also Israel is getting very badly hit. The official reports had given out very clearly that Israeli economy had shrunk by almost 20%
Yeah.
in the last quarter of 2023. And there's hardly any traffic from the two key ports, the Haifa port and the Iliad port in Israel. So Netanyahu also is in a very difficult situation. Now, whether he is able to prevail upon his internal issues and see that no direct attack takes place on Iran like it happened in Damascus is a question mark. If he does not carry out a direct attack on Iran and carries out the attacks on proxies like he has been doing earlier, whether it was the attack on a IRGC commander on 25th December last year where he was killed, or whether it was an attack on a whole crowd of people who were congregating for the death anniversary of Soleimani, who was the
Suleiman.
IRGC commander, where I think 100 odd people killed in the city of Kerman. So, if Israel continues or carries out its own retaliation based on Iran's attack on such targets, maybe it will not escalate. But if it goes directly into Iran, things may go totally out of control.
But Kanraji, this attack on 1st of April Damascus, was it a, I mean, what was the need, do you, according to you? Because this is the one which has actually escalated the whole affair. Was it a deliberate attempt by Netanyahu to draw Iran directly into the conflict?
Yeah, so it cannot be a matter of mistake or miscalculation, because when your fighter aircraft takes off from
Yeah.
your base and carries out a precision targeting, Reports have also said that there was a Canadian embassy or a consulate just next to the building. There was another building, and it just took out that small building. So it was a precision strike, and it was well planned and targeted. I've written also in my article, it is very difficult to say whether Israel was successful in provoking and baiting Iran to join the war directly by this strike, or whether Iran was waiting for such an opportunity where the red lines are crossed, and it can take action on Israel directly, legitimately as per the international rules and UN Charter. So, I mean, it is either way, but the attack was done by Israel. Whether Iran chose and to take this opportunity, that is a follow-up event, but the provocation was definitely from Israel.
That's I agree with you. But you see, the point still remains. Israel, he must be having some aim which as of now we are not able to decipher.
What I can think of is that if you go into the past about 1.5 2 months, Israel has been under tremendous international pressure because of the civilian casualties that are happening. The latest one was when six international aid workers on WCK World some Kitchen,
Yeah.
which is a welfare activity being carried out by an international NGO. Out of these seven who were killed, six were Western citizens from Australia, from England, from America, etc., which actually broke the leash as far as Israel was concerned. So Israel was facing a lot of heat because of the civilian casualties. As I mentioned earlier, the Al Shifa hospital attack too had drawn massive outrage because it had happened for the second time, and this time again there were live pictures of infants and other patients being killed and buried in one lot in the background, in the backyard of the Al Shifa hospital. So it is very much possible that Israel had to find a way how to deflect the entire world attention from its atrocities and the civilian casualties, and for that it had only one solution, that it had to drag out Iran from its shadow out in the open. That could be one possibility that I've been thinking about.
But you see, in the whole episode, one reason which the Israeli action duly supported by the US and the West is also, don't you think it is giving an opportunity for Iran, like they have called for unity of Muslims? No, irrespective of, let's forget for the time being Shia and Sunni aspect which are involved in it. Let's talk about Ummah. Haven't, don't you think the world should push this Iran case to such an extent that it gives a reason for them to join hands?
Join hands with whom?
The Muslim countries, they all start acting together against the West or Israel in particular, but against West. One more reason for them to extend support to each other.
Yeah, that is there. That is why Iran called for Muslim unity once it was struck in Damascus. And there are two very interesting facts about which I have written in my writings. One is that this is the first time after 1998, 1988, not 98, 1988, that is 36 years, that Iran has gone into a direct military conflict with weapons and strikes originating from its soil. So 1988, the Iran-Iraq war had ended, and thereafter Iran has not been involved in any direct military conflict with anyone since that time. And second interesting fact is that this is the first time ever that Iran has struck Israel directly from its territory ever,
Yeah. Yes.
because Iran was not part of the Arab coalitions which fought the 1948 or the 1967 or the 1973 wars. So these two facts are very stark and very revealing as far as Iran-Israel equation is concerned in terms of a direct conflict. They have always been involved in battles by proxy, battles through the militia, and Israel targeting Iranian proxies, even through direct airstrikes from its soil. But a direct attack from Iran into Israel is the first time it has ever happened in history, and Iran striking directly from its soil has happened for the first time after 1988. The only aberration is one strike which Iran had done in Pakistan again in January this year.
Okay, coming to India's response to this, India's official statement, it's a very balanced sort of thing. And actually, problem with India is that you cannot actually go and take sides in this case. Do you agree with what we have said?
Absolutely. I mean, there's nothing more that the emir could have said except that both sides should exercise restraint, and that this conflict should not spiral out into a larger conflict in the region. And we have to understand why India was amongst the few countries which came on proactively moment this Iranian strike took place. In fact, if you see the timeline from the region, it was only Saudi Arabia which had given an official statement by then. By the time India gave, even the Qatar and other countries' statement has come later in the afternoon, maybe because of timeline or whatever. But India was very prompt, and there are reasons for it. India has very critical commercial, economic, and strategic interest in West Asia. I had written a few weeks earlier how the West Asia has been the most prominent success story of Modi 2.0 in its foreign policy, and how West Asian countries and India have been able to find strategic convergence on multiple issues. And for India, as it rises out of the region in quest for its global leadership, West Asia is a very important fulcrum. So any instability that happens in West Asia is of huge concern to India. And three important, factors are always known and important to us. One, the most important is oil and gas. We get
Yeah.
almost 50% oil and 70% gas from the region, and if Persian Gulf and Red Sea are closed, then it becomes very difficult to do that. We have almost 8.5 million diaspora in the Gulf region. Although most of them are in the GCC countries like UAE, Saudi Arabia, Oman, etc. But in case the conflict escalates, there'll be demands of people to come back home. And like I said, although India has mastered the art and science of evacuation of its citizens over past a few years, especially after the evacuation from Yemen in March 2015, but it is still a logistic nightmare. And the third is the most important, which is the security issue. We have seen in the past that any instability or a security issues in the West Asia region finally finds its way back to the shores of India. And we find that that kind of instability always affects the positive economic growth that is taking place in the country. So India has to be concerned and has to call for restraints so that the conflict does not escalate to a point where its critical interests are, compromised.
Yeah. See, problem is that in case of Russo-Ukraine war, India has its diplomacy has been very apt, and we have generally maintained good relations with all. But in this case, I think more than being politically correct, we also have to think the long-term, fallouts on India, because both Iran and Israel are very critical for different reasons. Very critical for different reasons. Now, I want to know about, recently there was a report of China, brokering a peace between Saudi Arabia and Iran. And we know that China has good relations with Iran. Do you foresee any role for China in the whole conflict, or I mean, it's okay? They are just watching it, like they've been doing in few other issues also. Do you see anything that China can do?
China's foreign ministry has also given out a very prompt statement to de-escalate the tensions in the region. But China traditionally has never been known to take, sides in any conflict, or to mediate in any efforts to, get a ceasefire in a conflict. So China would be watching from the sidelines and see how it develops. Iran is a very important cog in China's outreach in the world, and with Russia, Iran, and China, they are making a very big
Yeah.
case for an alternate system in the world order, which is anti-Western, whether it is de-dollarization, whether it is your technology sharing, whether it is trade and commerce, whether it is energy imports, etc. So Iran is very important for China in its future calculus, and China is also not a country where I think where they are in a position to preach peace because of what they are doing both in
In
the South China Sea, in the Taiwan region, as also the standoff which is persisting with India since May 2020. So
correct.
I don't think China would take too much of any stand in resolving the conflict as such in this case.
But Kanraji, do you think that this is the time now? People are talking about surgical strikes all over the world. Go strike a target, come back and say that we have targeted the military this thing. And on the other hand, you have Israel Hamas continuing for 6 months, and Russia Ukraine covering for years together. So there exists a complete spectrum of warfare which seems to be going in the entire world. And then, so why I'm telling you this is I want you to draw attention of our, you know, for our armed forces that we need to be prepared for all sorts of eventualities.
Absolutely. I mean, the scope and spectrum of warfare has dramatically changed in the past decade, not only in terms of the nature of warfare, but also the major equipment through which or the weapon platforms through which the warfare is being fought. And if you remember the surgical strike carried out in Balakot in 2019, now that has become a benchmark for the Indian armed forces that come a terror attack which is identified and traced back to a foreign country and most of the times to Pakistan, Indian armed forces would not hesitate in taking it out. Similarly, after today or the last night's attack, which Iran has taken out, it was very interesting to read the IRGC commander's statement that now onwards, ever, if Israel tries to strike Iranian assets or targets anywhere, it will get its reply back. So I
So
was finding
on a
so many similarity
on,
with what happened in 2019 with us.
yeah.
How Iran is taking this small step which it has taken with Israel, that it has emboldened any of its future courses of action.
So on a lighter vein, वो राजनाथ जी की स्टेटमेंट रिट्रेट कर दी उन्होंने भी कि घर में घुस के मारे गए अगर दोबारा कुछ किया तो. So that
Correct.
is the state that the world is today. And another issue that I wanted you to highlight, though you have already said, no, with this sort of situation in the Middle East, and especially with our interest in Middle East, Haifa Post, you recall that IMEC was coming up in Haifa Post, and also everything has been put on hold. With Strait of Hormuz, I mean, isn't it because of the strategic importance of all these areas that the conflicts are also more? Because there are too
Absolutely.
many countries whose interests are involved in these areas.
Absolutely. That is why when we talk of the West Asian region, we say that there are a number of seas which are inflicting this region. The start is the sea with the crude oil which started all that. Then is the competition to get hold of maximum resources, which started of the game where US wanted to have the maximum pie of it, and there was competition even amongst Arab states. And you have the crude, you have the competition, and then based on this both is the implication that it has always been a conflict prone region. Plus we also have to go back to the history of how this region, the countries have been made the boundaries drawn, whether after the First World War or after the Second World War. Many of these countries have got artificially drawn borders where the population has been split on either side of the border without any consideration to their ethnic similarities or their affiliation. So it is bound to have this kind of effect. But there was hope in 2023 when Syria was taken back in Arab League, when Saudi-Iran reconciliation was happening, when Israel-Saudi reconciliation was almost at the stage of
True.
finality, that there could be unprecedented wave of reconciliation and peace in the region. But the way West Asia is, you can never say what happens tomorrow.
Problem वहीं आ जाती है ना, wherever there's just too much of meddling into the affairs by the British. So wherever they have created these artificial boundaries, and like you have very rightly said, see, artificial boundaries actually divide not only people, it divides their businesses, it divides the economy, it divides the resources. Like you see our own area, where
Absolutely,
the raw material was in present day Pakistan and the factories were in India.
absolutely.
So yes, that's a serious problem which is existing. But yes, you have to come out of this state. So, any other issue you want to highlight, which we have before we start taking the questions, because there are many questions which we need to answer. Any issue that we have, important issue that we have not touched upon.
So, I would just point out to a factual data on the map, which is right behind me, if you see on the screen. That is with regard to the possibility and potential of a direct Israel and Iran conflict. So,
Yeah,
if it happens, you have to understand that this is going to be a conflict which is happening between countries which are separated by almost 1700 kilometers. So it is not a conflict which is a conventional conflict where you'll have tanks and artillery guns and troops going and territory being captured. It is going to be what I would call a standoff conflict, in which the reliance will be on all kinds of aerial platforms, your air defense systems, and some non-kinetic options like cyber attacks, uh, those kind of things. So it is if it escalates, it is going to be a very very different conflict from what Russia Ukraine is,
yeah.
or what Israel Gaza or Israel Hamas war is. It is going to set very new benchmarks and new lessons for the future. Hopefully, it should not happen and better sense would prevail. But if it happens, this is something that has to be kept in mind. And within that also, Israel has to always reach out to Iran to travel 1700 kilometers. On the other hand, Iran already has its elements right on the border with Israel. So Iran can fight the battle either way, through its militias and proxies sitting right at the border with Israel, or directly from its homeland 1700 kilometers away. Israel, unfortunately, does not have that kind of a luxury.
I agree with you. So, I mean, I don't know if we can draw some parallel. Israel was created probably to keep an eye on the Middle East, and it was on the basis of religion. The other country which was, created on the basis of religion was Pakistan. And see, there's never been peace in this region for this reason only, because the victors of the World War wanted to use this strategic space, but
Yes.
unfortunately, it is the conflict which is brewing and nothing else. Kal Rajiv, I think by and large we have touched upon most of the important things. Uh, shall we go ahead and take the questions?
Yeah, we
There
can
are
take one
many
or
of
two
them.
questions.
Yeah, we'll pick up quickly. Yes. Ask, is US behind the increasing conflict behind Israel Iran with the goal of changing the regime in Iran before US elections?
I mean, firstly, US has been trying to do this for last 40 years and it has not succeeded.
Yeah.
And
Ever
secondly,
since 1979, eh?
they've been trying it. Secondly, if this is the way that US think that regime change can happen, then all good luck to them, because such actions only make the regime more
Yes.
stronger. They help in rallying the population behind the regime and not split the regime. So I don't think if this is the intention, it is going in the right way.
And in Iran, actually, the local population is against the US. I mean, you can it's very common to hear the slogans like "Down with US" and
Yes.
"Out" and all, and whatever US has done, especially in Iran, after Shah of Iran's, firstly Shah of Iran itself was imposed by the US, and
Yes.
whatever US has done, including the trade sanctions and all that. Yes, what you said is absolutely correct. By taking such actions, I don't think the regime change can be effective. We go on to the next question from JBJP. ask us, sir, isn't this a good development in a way that now both Iran and Israel will come out of proxy war, hell and whale, which plagued Kashmir, Punjab too via Pakistan? Let these two nations sort out mess now. He's saying, ki, okay, let them fight with each other. Why involve others? Trying to draw the proxies which Pakistan had unleashed in Kashmir and Punjab.
I mean, it is too simplistic to look at this problem like this because any conflict which happens in the region, and especially if an direct open conflict happens between Iran and Israel, it is not going to remain isolated to these two nations. If that was the case, these two nations could have fought for years to come and sorted out their issues, like something like what Russia and Ukraine are doing right now. But in this case, because of the dynamics of the region, any open conflict is not only going to draw in the regional players, but it is also going to draw in the world players. Yesterday, I think today morning only, Russia has said that now, in case there is any attack on Iran, Russia will have its full support. So, you can't have a conflict where it pitches one part of the world against another part of the world. Uh, uh, it should not happen like that.
Absolutely. Totally agree with you. Jal Chaturvedi has added on to our discussion, and he says Iran is an inheritor of a proud heritage. Iran cannot be cooled down so easily.
Absolutely. I mean, I've written it in my article also. Iran is a ancient civilization. It has
Yes,
got a very proud heritage, and there is something that Iran shows to the world, which I don't think many countries are able to do, which is exercise strategic patience and restraint. They have been under the boil for last 40 years on numerous counts. I'm not saying Iran is innocent. Iran has its own doings for which they are accountable. But to sustain this kind of a pressure, sanctions, everything, and still be on the ball is something remarkable. And it owes it to its ancient civilizational heritage and the legacy that the people and the systems have inherited.
absolutely. No, the time when in the Middle East or Arabian Peninsula, when people were in tribe, there was a civilization thriving in Iran, which had
Absolutely.
influence all over the world, including us.
Yes.
Thank you, sir, for wonderful insertion, sir. Jalal Sudhakar ji has next question. Congratulations, very well covered, Rajiv. The strategic rivalry between the US and China in the West Asia is one of the primary reasons for the ongoing conflict. Comment.
Uh, I would not say primary reasons of the conflict, but it is a spin-off of the conflict that is happening in the West Asia because the conflict did not start because of the strategic rivalry between US and China. The start point of the conflict was something else. Now, how this conflict develops and how the strategic equations of US and China get affected by this conflict is a totally different matter. So, I would say yes, it is a matter of it's a factor, but not a primary factor.
Yeah. So I will just scroll through the thing in case there is another interesting question I will take. Okay, let's take this. He seems to be keen on knowing this. If Israel's attack on Iran's consulate was intelligence based, then Israeli intelligence is really commendable. Your views?
I mean, it's a no-brainer. Israel has got a very, very intricate network of intelligence and sources across the region, and that is why they could, take Soleimani out in January 2020. That is
Yes.
why they could take out Rezavi on 25th December. That is how a strike could happen, on the crowd which had gathered for the Soleimani's mourning. That is how so many scientists have been assassinated in
Yeah.
pointed killings, the nuclear scientists of Iran. So there is no doubt that Israeli intelligence is good. But there is also no doubt on the fact that Israeli intelligence failed miserably on 7th October, and which is a thing that they'll have to review for rest of the lives. They can keep analyzing, assessing, but the fact is that they've failed miserably on 7th October.
Actually, that probably, Kal Rajiv, like we had discussed in one of the episodes, it was more of a complacency than availability of intelligence. Probably they knew everything, but it was just problem कुछ नहीं होता है. And actually, being both of us have served in the military intelligence directorate, you would see whenever we have left something on the premise कि कुछ नहीं होता है, that
Complacency.
hurts you the most.
Absolutely.
And suddenly you
Complacency.
realize कि आया था, we should have taken it more seriously. And I think in the life of the nations also it happens. When that happens, the reason for the downfall of that nation, and probably even in the individual life also, whenever you are casual कि कुछ नहीं होता है, उसी दिन पेट्रोल खत्म हो जाएगा या टायर पंचर हो जाएगा, if you have not paid attention to thinking that everything is going to be hunky dory. With that, I think, Kal Rajiv, we have covered most of the aspects, and we are well within our time also. And all the relevant questions given by the viewers have also been answered. In the end, I would like you to just summarize very briefly what we have discussed before we end this show. Over to you.
So, I mean, the conflict right now is a very, very critical inflection point. The UNSC resolution, which was passed after repeated attempts, has failed to get a ceasefire. The Damascus attack on the Iranian consulate has finally drawn the Iranian retaliation last night, and now the only thing that we have to see is whether this results in further escalation, or whether it is taken down as one-off incident and let the battle progress. This can also be an opportunity if Israel takes it the second way to find a solution to the ongoing conflict in Gaza, because right now it is going nowhere, just dragging along and finding no solution. So we have to wait and watch. Maybe in next week or 2 weeks, there'll be clearer picture on how this conflict progresses. Thank you, sir.
Very well covered. In fact, this is the time normally, live audience start leaving. But you have summarized in such a way that not even a single audience has left during the summary. So that's the compliment to you. So
Thank
all those who are watching live, please like our episode, and also share and subscribe. Kal Rajiv, thank you very much for a wonderful, wonderful discourse on the issue. And I think the way it is happening, the pace at which the things are taking place, we'll have to call you very, very soon for another update. Thank you very much. And yes, I must say that audience must go through the old episodes where Kal Rajiv was our guest. Most of the things that you had predicted, I was going through your old episodes and also the articles. In fact, what happened last night, you had said that just about a week back in your article on how Iran is going to come. I think immediately after the 1st of April attack, you had actually said that Iran is going to come out openly. And you had given reasons also for that. So, with that, we come to an end of today's session. Thank you very much, Kal Rajiv, and
Thank
Jai
you,
Hind.
sir. Always a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you, Kal Rajiv, and Jai Hind.